To finalize with this general introduction to this course on Latin American migration, let's talk about the experience of migrancy and diaspora. I'm not pretending to cover all completely this issue because it's a very complex issue. But let me give you a few clues and share with you some ideas about this. As I said before, we have to maintain a clear distinction between modern immigrants and transnational migrants. The modern immigrants, I mean, we are talking about our great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, coming from different parts of the world. They usually came to embark in this adventure. It was a lifetime adventure, and they changed forever. And their purpose was to become immigrants, to adapt, to learn the language, to assimilate, to acculturate to their this new culture, which meant also, of course, losing their own culture. And this is what we see everywhere. I mean, in most cases, the first generation, the second generation of migrants have already lost the language, the original language. This is quite common. It has to do with this kind of migration and the kind of experience and the kind of project that this kind of migration, modern migration, involve. However, transnational migration is different because the people who is involved is coming not to let's say, imaginarily open space, but to a full space. What do I mean by that? When the Europeans, let's put, Germans, came to the U.S. in the 19th century, they came to a society that was developing, that was opening up, that had offered many opportunities because of this supposedly emptiness. I mean, everything was there to be done. What happened with the people coming from the south to the north is that actually everything has been done. Everything is there in place. There are opportunities, of course, but the opportunities are much more limited. And not only that, but the ways in which they will have to live and adapt and survive are already established and delimited in a much clear-cut manner. So people migrate nowadays. Most of the people, I mean, this is a generalization, of course, but most of the people migrate always having in mind the idea of return, coming back home. Of course, most of the people will never come back home for the many different personal, social, economic reasons. Will never be back home. But this is kept in the imaginary of the migrant, and this changes completely the way the migrant will act and perform and experience and even suffer, migrancy. This is what we are talking about when we talk about the experience of migrancy. It is a new migratory mode. A new migratory mode structurally related to this transnational distribution of labor, of course, but the protagonists try to live often clandestinely in the metropolises, remaining in a sort of affective and imaginary limbo, fed by the daily experience of marginality and anxiety. There is a lot of not only marginalization, a lot of discrimination, but also there is anxiety because of this idea, this goal, this dream of returning. Therein lies the essential geocultural and psychopolitical difference between transnational migrancy and diasporas and the international migrations of modern times. So who are these trans migrants? Of course, we tend to think, and probably in what I have been saying, I will lead you to think that they are the poorest of the poor. Well, this is not true. Migration is a very costly enterprise. You not only need more and more, increasingly so, money, sometimes huge sums of money, $5,000 or $10,000 to migrate to the U.S. from Africa or from Latin America is a huge amount of money for many, 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 many people. But we're not talking about economic capital. We also talk about cultural capital and social capital. You need networks, you need contacts, you need references, you need information. And all that provides or indicates that the people who is able to migrate, who is able to decide on migrating, is not the poorest of the poor, but is the people that has already access to a certain levels of important economic, social, cultural capital. So, transnational migrants, as I said before, they rarely try to settle, but they, for one reason or another, they will become sedentary. And what is important is that they become not really citizens of the world by diasporic denizens. Zygmunt Bauman points out that the world is divided between the elites who are globally mobile, who can physically and virtually, move freely in space, and travel and navigate through internet and communicate, etc., and those who are locally confined and sentenced to cope with the changes that come from outside. That is, globalization always comes, but it's very different if globalization comes to you or you decide to come to globalization. So, migrancy, transnational migrancy, shakes identities, produces a deep crisis in identities. Many times, of course, a crisis has both sides. A crisis could be good or could be bad. A crisis could be good and bad. So crisis means transformation, and transformation is always lived as something that can in which you can gain a lot, but also where you are suffering the destruction or the loss of parts of yourself. Every migration involves a long, slow and painful process of acculturation of uncertain conclusion, because it is a traumatic experience whose effects, not always visible, promote a radical crisis of identity. People have to is going to lose or is going to struggle not to lose, but finally they will ending up losing, their local and national memories. Those memories will become worn out, will become more distant, will become more detached to reality, will become more nostalgic object, and they will be forced, in migration, in migrancy, to rebuild those cultural memories that are in a deterritorialized way. I mean, usually cultural memories are nurtured by daily life experience. When you are cut in your daily life experience, you are cut. Those memories. For the migrant, there is a conflict between what is in the daily life experience and the cultural memories that are kept on the other past and on the other part, on the past, in a place that exists somewhere else, but is no longer with you. So they had to negotiate that and rebuild, the territorialized cultural memories that are detached from the specific locality or location, we can say. So this produces what we can call the culture in diaspora, a migrant culture that is marked by the estrangement and psychosocial dissociation between what, which means that the migrant always feels in transit. It's always up in the air. It's always suspended between two different worlds: the world that is now and here, and the world that was left there and then. And so between those two worlds, one world is kept is maintained and lived daily, in the everyday experience, and the other world that is kept, in the memories. But that cut, the dissociation, it has to be negotiated day after day, sometimes for years, many times for the rest of their lives. This culture is nurturing social uncertainty, economic instability, legal harassment, discrimination, and the exploitation suffered day after day. But also by the hopes, and many times those hopes are simply delusions, that the homecoming is always at hand, because it's possible because of the facilities that we have nowadays to communicate and travel anywhere. So this brings me to what I call the migrant condition. The migrant is lost in an alien society. Is alienated from his own society, his or her own society. Of course, this was a personal decision. It was a decision that the individual made. But that doesn't solve the problem of the feelings and the experiences that the individual will have. So through time, migrants gradually develop the ability to negotiate between this here and now of the living experience in migrancy and the then and there of the cultural memories that are kept in the past, that are only kept in the past, and a past that is always farther and farther and farther away. And this tension is what generates a divided and flexible identity. For many people, this is actually a terrific experience, and they will, thrive in this undecidability. For others, is very difficult, very very painful, and although they will decide to stay, for instance, but they will decide to stay in migrancy for economic reasons, for affective reasons, because their children, were born here and that they will stay here, and for many different reasons. But that doesn't solve the issue of the inner deep pain. This is, as Giorgio Agamben says, a world of denizens. These are non-citizens citizens and are actually kept as non-citizens, as we can see in the States with the difficulties to fix this issue and passing a law that will solve the situation of so many millions of people who are actually kept in this condition of denizens, who, because they are not naturalized nor repatriated, these are non-citizens or denizens. And what I think is important, the important point I want to make is that actually this is done, I wouldn't say on purpose, but this is very beneficial to maintain the migrants, the Latin American migrants in this situation. Is very beneficial. It's very convenient for the system. It's very convenient for capital. It's very beneficial for the corporations and the farming industries and so on and so forth, because they are kept as the most vulnerable of workers, of laborers, and they are there, and they will be there, and they will keep providing their labor, with the benefits and without the benefits and without the securities that their legalization will provide. So let me finish with a reference to Samuel Huntington's The Spanish Challenge, because it's what I call a terrific example of enlightened xenophobia. Because I suppose you are familiar with Samuel Huntington's work, but you can find it. I mean, it's provided in the bibliography, and but it represents the feelings. It represents the feelings of a large numbers of people. I wouldn't say the majority of people in this country, but large numbers of people. The fears and the misapprehensions and the misconceptions of people in this country. In order to finish, I'll invite you to listen to a corrido by Los Tigres del Norte, which is called La Jaula de Oro, the golden cage, that it was very, very famous, has been very, very famous, and that actually I think describes in a very precise way how many migrants, particularly Latin American migrants, feel about this experience. Thank you.